He was an icon in professional wrestling since the late 70s. He's held numerous championships, including the infamous Green Intercontinental.
Arriba! Welcome, everyone, to Straight Outta Jersey. I am Joe Zapata, and my next guest is an icon in the world of wrestling. He was one of my favorite wrestlers as a child. He's a former two-time Intercontinental champion, former two-time tag team champion. He's in the Luthez Hall of Fame of Wrestling, and of course, he's in the WWE Hall of Fame. He's a Jersey resident, and he's a friend. Here is Tito Santana. How you doing, Tito?
Doing good, Joe. Thank you for having me on, and really looking forward to reaching out to all these fans.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I like to ask all the legends right away. You took a lot of bumps to entertain us as kids. How is your health today? How you feeling?
Well, I have a small tear on my meniscus on my left knee.
Okay.
I've got herniated discs on my neck and little problems with my back. But other than that, you know, compared to a lot of my friends, I'm pretty healthy. You know, I work out pretty often, and real light. I don't go heavy.
That's great.
But I think I'm very blessed that I'm as healthy as I am with all the bumps that I took.
Yeah, you look great. You look really good. So when I saw you look really good. You know, we just had the Super Bowl, and a lot of people don't realize you were a great athlete. And I believe you had a contract with the Chiefs. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was a free agent with the Kansas City Chiefs in 1975. You know, I wasn't there long, but at least I got to wear the uniform. And then I went and played in Canada for the BC Lions.
Now, when you were in college, Tully Blanchard, I believe, was your quarterback, correct?
Tully Blanchard was the quarterback. Ted DiBiase was also on the same team, the $1 Million Man. So, and then a bunch before and a bunch afterwards that were there.
Was Tully the one who got you to turn into professional wrestling?
Yeah, his father was a promoter in San Antonio, and you know they started talking to me when I was a junior, and I was getting letters from the NFL. So you know, of course, my interest was to play football, and I believe I would have made the Kansas City team that year if I hadn't hurt my ankle. I kind of tore my Achilles tendon. And I had like 3/4 zone shots before I couldn't do anything for 2 weeks. And when I ran the 40, I had a real bad time. You know, I think I ran like a 5.1. I used to run a 4.8 40. And when I got cut, the head coach says, you're a great athlete, but you're too slow. And I just kicked myself in the butt because I should have just had, once I got better, because the first day when I had to run the 40, I just had him tape my ankle up like almost wearing a cast, so I didn't have no push off my ankle, and I didn't turn in a good time. But everything turns out for the best. I have no regrets.
Well, you were a tight end. Was that what you were?
Yeah. Yep.
So you were Travis Kelce.
Yeah, not quite as big, quite as good as he was, but he is.
Yeah. Who trained you? Started training you in wrestling? Was it Hiro Matsuda?
Yeah. Tully Blanchard and I moved from Texas to Tampa, Florida on December the 31st, 1976. So my first day of training was January 1st, 1977. Oh, wow. And it was Hiro Matsuda. And Barry Orton was also breaking in, and his father and Bob Orton Jr. would stop over and work out with us.
Wow, that's pretty cool. Now, when you started wrestling, you weren't getting the money I think you were promised. Is that correct?
No. I mean, Joe Blanchard, I signed with the Chiefs. My contract for the Chiefs was $18,000 a year.
Okay.
Which, at the time wasn't bad. There was another guy that had a contract. He went in the late rounds, and his contract was for $15,000 from Arkansas. And Joe Blanchard, the father, is telling me, Merced, because that's my real name, he says, you could be making $80,000 a year in wrestling. So I thought I was going to jump right in, and you know, kind of like would be a contract, kind of like professional football.
Mm-hmm.
And boy, little did I know, you know, I almost didn't start wrestling because uh, I was going to quit. Terry Funk was the champion, and he came into wrestle in Tampa as a champion. And he asked me how I was liking it. I said, I'm really enjoying it. I said, but I'm not making any money, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how much longer I can afford to keep paying rent with not bringing any income. I was sharing an apartment with Tully Blanchard,
Mm-hmm.
so it wasn't that much. But you know, when you start just putting out, you know,
Mm-hmm.
you want something coming in, and he said, "Well, don't do anything." I told him, I said, "I think I'm just going to stop and uh, go back and train, you know, to be a, you know, because I had a contract with the BC Lions.
Yep.
After I left there, I signed a 3-year contract, and I was going to go back to play football." And he says, "Let me talk to Eddie Graham." Eddie Graham was the promoter, and he owned Florida. And in the this is Saturday
Mm-hmm.
morning, they called me into the office, and they started booking me. And a couple of weeks later, I was on my way to Atlanta, Georgia, to work for Jim Barnett, who owned Atlanta, Georgia. Ted Turner owned the TV station,
Mm-hmm.
but my guarantee was $300 a week, in Atlanta, Georgia.
Wow, that wasn't much.
No,
Did you like wrestling growing up, or you didn't? You just were doing it for the money?
I never watched it. I
Okay.
wasn't a wrestling fan. In Texas, I played football. I wrestling came on like at midnight, and real
Mm-hmm.
late, and I didn't know any wrestlers. I never watched it, and I
Mm-hmm.
had no interest in, so I didn't know anything about wrestling when I started training.
Mm-hmm. Did you know it was kayfabe? Did you know it was, kind of an act, a show?
Well, I didn't know until after I had been working out.
Mm-hmm.
Because Tully Blanchard took, they didn't smarten me up.
No, I'm sure.
They didn't back then.
Mm-mm. Very
Only the
protective.
wrestlers knew,
Mm-hmm.
that it was kayfabe. And
Mm-hmm.
I went to watch a match with Tully Blanchard in Amarillo, Texas, because the Funks owned the territory there.
Mm-hmm.
So I walked into the locker room, and it was the heels locker room, and back then, man, everybody in the heel, they looked like they were hungry freaking tigers, ready
Oh,
to eat you up.
mm-hmm.
I
Wow.
don't know if you know, I don't know how old you are, Joe, but back then, I don't think there was too many fans who were willing to jump in the ring and challenge a wrestler. They were mean looking guys, and they kind of scared me, and I said,
Mm-hmm.
and I used to think, well, all they know is that I'm a good athlete. They know I don't know anything about wrestling, and they're talking about me making good money, but that's all I knew. I was trying to figure it out myself.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started working out, and Hiro Matsuda puts you through the grind, breaking you in. What
Mm-hmm.
they do is when they break you in is they try to make you quit.
Oh yeah.
But luckily I was a good athlete, and I was in football season had just ended, so I was still in pretty good shape.
Mm-hmm.
So I was able to go. Uh, so I made it through and started learning, but it took a while for me to, because I didn't know anything. I mean, Tully Blanchard was our quarterback,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm sure he never told me that. I never discussed this with him, but I'm sure in the summers he was wrestling and making money, and like he was way ahead of me.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I didn't know. I had to learn how to crawl, and then I had to learn how to walk before I even started running.
Wow.
It was a slow process for me.
Wow. So I'm actually 74. So I was born in 74. So I grew up in late 70s and all 80s. I was a big wrestling fan.
Oh, okay, so you know what I'm talking about, the mean
Yep.
looking guys. I mean,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. How did you get into the WWE? How was that? How
uh,
did you get there?
well, I was wrestling in Amarillo. I went from Atlanta
Mm-hmm.
I was there for 10 months. Then I went to Charlotte, North Carolina, and Charlotte was a step above Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
And I was climbing the card. I was getting better matches and going up against better opponents.
Mm-hmm.
But back then, if you weren't a main event guy, you would more likely switch territories about once a year.
Mm-hmm.
A year you'd be good to spend a year there.
Yep.
So I made uh, I had I
No,
hadn't met Vince McMahon. I hadn't been to New York yet, but I met Andre the Giant in Amarillo,
mm-hmm.
and I had become friends with Andre the Giant. And I mean, I'd let him stay in my apartment in Amarillo, and he'd sleep in my bed. And the poor guy, the bed wasn't long enough, But I'd go in there and I'd laugh because his legs were sticking out, because he'd get pretty drunk pretty much every night,
Oh, I'm
and
sure. I'm sure he
he,
would.
he slept in my. But I met Andre in 1977. Uh, I had just got to Atlanta in 1977. It was in April, and the Ole Anderson was the booker, him and Gene Anderson, and he says, "You're going to pick up Andre the Giant at the airport," and I said, "Okay." So David Von Erich. So
Okay.
David Von Erich was 6'7". Andre the
Mm-hmm.
Giant was,
Mm-hmm.
at the time was probably 7'2", 7'3".
Mm.
And I had a Granada, 1975 Granada with bucket seats.
Oh
And I
my
said,
God.
"Yeah, I'll go pick him up." So Andre gets in my car, and of course, he had a hard time getting in, but he stretched a little bit, and he broke my bucket seat. But I ended up having to get another car because we always travel in groups,
Mm-hmm.
but I got a bigger car. And whenever Andre was around, he knew that he was going to travel with me, and I hung out and try to keep up with him partying, but there's no way that I could. I mean,
No.
Andre could put him down.
Oh yeah, he could drink a lot, Andre.
Oh
I know
my
that.
God!
um, your name is obviously not Tito Santana. That's your wrestling name. How did you get the name Tito Santana?
Well, when me and DiBiase were in Amarillo, and I told you Andre came in,
Mm-hmm.
and Mario Savoldi, his father was Angelo Savoldi. He
Mm-hmm.
was a wrestler, and he was an agent here for Vince. Mario was kind of working with Blackjack Mulligan and God, I can't remember his partner, the guy that was they bought from the Funks. They bought the territory, and I went to work in Amarillo because they promised me they were going to build me as a big Mexican star. And
Mm-hmm.
well, that didn't happen. DiBiase was there, and Andre stopped by, and Andre says, "How you doing, boss?" Because he used to call everybody boss, and the way he made sure he got everybody's name right.
Mm-hmm.
I said, uh, I'm doing okay. I said, but they made me a bunch of promises, and they treat me like crap here.
Mm-hmm.
And I had no idea. Andre, Mario Savoldi, and Andre got together, and they snuck a tape from Amarillo territory and sent it to Vince. And Andre put in a word for me, and DiBiase already had a starting date to come to New York.
Mm-hmm.
That was 1970. That was 1979,
Mm-hmm.
and before you know it, I'm on my way with Ted DiBiase. We started, DiBiase started a little sooner because what Vince McMahon used to do is, if he was going to give you a push, you would come in and you do TV tapings in Allentown and Brantford, Allentown, and there was another town 30 miles from Allentown,
Mm-hmm.
and they taped 3 weeks. So
Mm-hmm.
you do 3 week tapings. You go back. He came back to Amarillo. Came back and did 3 more TV tapings. Came back to Amarillo,
Mm-hmm.
and then him and I came at the same time. So by the time uh, Ted DiBiase got there, people have been watching him on TV for 6 weeks. So he
Wow.
was over pretty good already. And he came in as the Intercontinental Champion.
Mm-hmm.
They created it was a different title, a different belt.
Oh,
I
wow.
think he wasn't the Intercontinental, he was the International. They had a little different name.
Mm-hmm.
But we both came in together, and I met Vince McMahon Sr. and he says, "We need to catch. You need a catchy name. Mercedes just doesn't have a ring."
Mm-hmm.
So I said, "Well, I like Santana." There was a guy in my hometown in Mission. His last name was Santana, and I said, "I like the sound of Santana." So I went in my first TV taping. Uh, he says, "You're going to be Tino, Tino, Tino
No, okay.
Santana."
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Okay." I said, "I don't care what you call me." I said, "I'm just happy to be here." And I went out and I wrestled and I signed autographs. So anybody who has a Tino Santana autograph,
Are worth money.
yeah, it's got to be worth some money. But I wrestled my first match. I came back through the dressing room doors, and Vince Jr. and Vince Sr. were waiting for me when I went through the door. And he says, and they used to record the matches, so tape them. So he says, "From now on, you're going to be Tito Santana."
Oh, wow.
And I said, "Okay, I'm
Mm-hmm.
happy. It sounds good to me." And,
um,
and Tito does have a better sound
it
than
does.
Tino.
Yeah, I like it. It does. And you got a lot of success right away. You and Ivan Putski in '79, I think, beat the Valiant Brothers.
Right? Yeah.
And you guys went off there. Now, how was Ivan Putski as a tag team partner? Because I heard mixed reactions because he seemed to get a lot of favoritism. Is that true?
Uh, yeah, I mean, Ivan was over like $1 million in New York, and he had two sons, and they were both athletes in Texas. And he would go, he would leave, and he'd be gone like 3 days a week, and Vince would pay for his flight and come back, and they'd pay for his rental cars. And I mean, Ivan Putski was over like $1 million. And I didn't know that, but Ivan told me that he went up to Vince McMahon and told him that he wanted to team up with me. So that's the way. I always thought it was Vince McMahon who went and asked him if he wanted to be my partner, but Ivan told me no, Tito. That's always he used to call me Tito because he was a Polak. And he says, I went up to Vince and I asked him that I wanted to be your partner. And, I was still climbing the ladder. I mean, I started in '77. I got to New York in '79. So I got to, New York was the big leagues. It still was drawing bigger crowds than anywhere else in the country. Nobody else had coliseums that could draw 24,000 people like Madison Square Garden or Philadelphia or Baltimore or Boston. They had the bigger cities over here. So, that was a big break for me. The minute we took the belts from the Valiant Brothers, it kind of pulled me to where Ivan was at. All of a sudden I'm a main eventer. I went to Japan and I got paid pretty good because I had been the WWF Tag Team Champion. So there was the beginning. So I always give him credit. Ivan helped my career quite a bit.
Yep, I remember. Now I'm actually interviewing Don Morocco next week. He's a friend also, and he actually told me, and that's remember as a child, you and him in your feud winning the title. He said he believes that the title was supposed to go to Jimmy Snuka, but because of his problems he had with the girl and everything, Vince McMahon said, no, it's going to go to Tito. Is that true?
I was just getting started, so I was not privy to, I do know that Jimmy Snuka was over like $1 million. I mean, he did that feud with God, what was his name? Before Don Morocco, he had a feud where he got over like he was over
Ray,
like
Ray Stevens, Ray the Cripper
Ray Stevens, yeah.
Ray Stevens. Yep.
Yeah. And out of that, I mean, everywhere we went that Jimmy was at, places were sold out.
Yep.
And, Jimmy would come to the arena, and this is what I heard. I mean, could be right, could be wrong, that he would drive up. He had a driver. Vince had him pay for a driver, and the guy would wrestle also and get paid, but he was like looked after Jimmy. And they would pull up to the arena, and Jimmy would say, "Not tonight, brother." And they'd go back to the hotel and start partying.
Oh wow!
And of course, you missed a few shows and hurt the business. They had their second thoughts, and I do agree with Morocco. I think it was supposed to go to because I'm sure they had mentioned you're going to be working with Jimmy Snuka, and then you're going to drop the belt, because that's the way they would do it.
Yep.
In a few months, and you drop the belt, and then you have some return matches, and
and then you and Greg Valentine had some great matches. And actually, I talked to Greg Valentine, and he said you were one of his favorite people to wrestle. He said, though, once in a while you did potato him a few times.
I potatoed him.
That's what he said.
Yeah, he was. My nickname for him was Cemento. He was. Talk about a stiff dude.
Yes.
But he didn't mind getting receipts. No. Him and I used to get home and tell my wife, I've had easier street fights than wrestling. Greg Valentine. I mean, we had the longest feud in the history of the WWF, and that's the reason, because the people, first of all, they taped the surgery. I came out of the surgery, and
I remember that. Before
I went into the surgery, I told Vince had the cameras ready for me, and I told I forgot who was there with the cameras, and I said, guys, as soon as I wake up from my anesthesia, I said, put the microphone and let's do the interview, because I figured it would be legit. People could see that I was groggy, and and people really got into it, I wrestled in Madison Square Garden 12 days after I had my surgery in Madison Square Garden, and I taped my because I played football, so I knew how to tape knees. I taped my knee, and I had a brace, and it was still pretty tender. I told Greg, I said, there's not much I can do. I said, so I'm going to come in there, and I'm just going to attack you. And I don't know if you remember the first match in Madison Square Garden. I just took him down, and I got on top of him and just put the pounding to him. And
I remember.
And then he just took off, and got counted out.
Yep, I remember.
But I wouldn't have been able to do much. But the minute I attacked him, the freaking fans went crazy.
Yeah, you were so over. I mean, I remember you, and you knew how to sell, because as a young kid watching you, when you would get beat up, we were feeling it. We were like, come on, Tito, do something.
Yeah.
It was really, we were really engaged. March 31st, 1985, WrestleMania 1. You started off against the Executioner, who was Buddy Rhodes under the mask.
Right.
What do you remember that night? Did you think it was going to be as big WrestleMania as it is today?
No. Nobody. Vince McMahon had a meeting with us in the dressing room. He says, guys, I said, before, like an hour before the show, and he says, it's a do or die. He says, I've invested everything. We're going to either make it or we're going to go under tonight.
Oh, wow.
And I don't know if you remember, but me and Valentine had the hottest feud. I mean, we were selling out all the big arenas, even without Hulk Hogan being on the card. And, back then, the only thing it was selling, we had a team, B team, C team. You had 3 shows every night. And whenever Hulk was around, he was the one that was selling out pretty much everywhere. And all of a sudden, me and Greg had so many matches. Hulk was a great, was over like $1 million, but the first time around, he'd sell out, and then he'd come back with the same guy, and he would the crowd would drop, because people didn't believe that they could beat him. He was over so much.
Mm-hmm.
Me and Greg, we sold out, and we build up, towns that were down, and we'd build them up, and eventually have a blow up match after about the fifth time around. And the people just kept coming. They couldn't get enough because uh, you know I'd be selling, or we'd have the endings that we had were pretty good, and people bought our gimmick, and I mean we wrestled each other for close to 2 years.
Yeah, that was a long feud. I remember that.
Yeah.
One of the you fought, obviously you lost the title to Macho Man Randy Savage. Ricky Steamboat told me that his matches were a little bit Randy was a little bit intense with his matches. Was he that with you, Macho Man?
Well, he Macho Man came in, and and I don't like to talk bad about anybody because Macho Man and we were in Atlanta, Georgia together in 1977.
Yep.
But he had not been to the big leagues.
No.
He was in Kentucky. The father owned the territory, and
Correct.
he was the main eventer there all the time. And when he came, he had a southern type of match with a lot of wrestling. And I remember the first time I wrestled with him here in New York, I knew that I was going to be dropping the belt to him. And we went out there, and I threw about 10 drop kicks, and the people just farted at the match. I didn't get the response. He wasn't over.
Okay.
And I didn't get the response that I would usually get. And I had a talk with him afterwards, and I said, Randy, this is a big man territory. I said the wrestling fans in the WWF, I said, they want to see a fight. Because Bruno Sammartino, I mean, he was the man.
Yeah.
I said the people here, they like to see a kick and punch and a little bit of wrestling. Kick and punch and beat the crap out of somebody and a little bit of wrestling. And it didn't take him long, man. He mastered it, but he was intense. I don't know if you ever heard, he would come out with about 3 sheets of paper with all the match in script, and everybody in the WWF, we didn't plan the match. We just knew the ending, and we just went in there and we wrestled. And again, it didn't take him long before he threw away the notes and just went out there and wrestled. But he was just an intense guy per se, in life. I think it's the reason he had, one of the reasons he had that big heart attack that he died from.
You have something pretty rare, is that you wrestled your entire career as a babyface. Did Vince ever want to turn you heel or anything like that, or did you ever want to turn heel?
Yeah, I don't know if you remember when Rick Martel, and I split up. Yeah, and we ended up dropping the belts to Demolition. And Rick said he had to take off about a year because his wife was something wrong health-wise with his wife. And I said, Rick, hire a nurse. We're making some good money. He said, you can pay for a full-time nurse. He said, no, Tito, I want to be with her. And I said, I respected that. So a year later, I find out he's coming back. Okay, Rick's coming back.
Okay.
So before I found out he was going to come back as the model, I went in there and talked to Vince, and I said, Vince, can I be the heel? Excuse me. And Vince says, no, there's a few things that I still want to do with you as a babyface.
Oh, wow.
But he never did anything with me from there on. He gave me the Matador gimmick that I couldn't stand.
Yeah.
I thought I did a pretty good job with it, but it would have got over if he would have pushed it, but he never pushed it.
No, he didn't. He didn't push it at all. So what happened with, because I know Rick Martel and Tom Zank were originally the Cam-Man connection, and then one day Tom Zank was gone, and it was you and Rick Martel. Do you know why Tom Zank left?
Tom Zink was gone. I don't know. I never asked Rick. It's none of my business. it didn't work out between the two of them because they were getting over pretty good too.
Mhm.
You know, they were a good tag team.
Yeah, they were.
So then Vince McMahon called me in and he says, Tito, I'm going to team you. Do you mind teaming up with Rick Martel? I want to call you, you guys are going to be the
Strike Force.
no. We were going to be what are the guys that the Border Patrol?
A Border Patrol.
Yeah, you know, you're going to be the Border Patrol. You know, you're in the South Texas,
Mhm.
and Rick Martel in the border in Canada.
Mhm.
And I said, you know, Vince, I said, I'll do whatever you want to do. I said, but I knew that there was some Mexicans that were uh, getting in the train cars in the heat that were dying, you know, of
Mhm.
exhaustion.
Mhm.
And I said, Border Patrol, it might turn its heel, you know, with the Mexicans dying in the railroad cars.
Wow.
And he says, you got a point. And then the next TV he says, nope, you're going to be Strike Force,
Oh,
which,
wow.
you know, ended up turning out to be a pretty good deal.
Yep, it did. I want to ask you about Vince McMahon. There was a documentary about him, Vince McMahon, and everything. I don't know if you saw it on Netflix. Did you see any of that behavior with Vince back in the 80s or anything? You know, Vince
Well,
is a hot topic.
since I wasn't hanging out with Vince McMahon or Pat Patterson,
Okay.
you know, there was rumors, but I
Mm-hmm.
was never around.
Mm-hmm.
I found out, you know, there was some serious crazy stuff going on, you know,
Yep. Obviously, with the ring boy.
with them, you know, and you
Yep.
know, is it true? I don't know. I'm not going to tell you it's true because I
Mhm.
wasn't there.
Mhm.
Everything is just hearsay, kind of like what you've heard.
Yep. Exactly. Vince McMahon's father. Did you like his father or the junior better? Which one did you find better to work with business with?
His father was more. His father would give you his word and he'd keep
Mhm.
it.
Oh, really?
Vince McMahon, you know, would lie to you, tell
Really?
you things, and things wouldn't come true. He changed his mind,
Mm-hmm.
and the stronger he got, the more money he got, the worse he treated some of the wrestlers.
Oh, wow. You know, I know a lot of the boys, the old school legends and everything. And out of all the wrestlers I talked to, one of them back in the day was really nasty to me. And how was you with Ole Anderson? He's always been a jerk to me, people and fans. How was Ole Anderson with you?
In my book, you know, I have a book.
Yes. Don't call me
Don't call
Chico.
me Chico. Yeah,
Mm-hmm. On there. Yeah.
I wrote about that because Ole Anderson was the only wrestler that I had nothing good to say about.
Wow.
He was a racist.
Mm-hmm.
He was abusive of power,
Mm-hmm.
and you know he just wasn't a good man.
No, a lot of wrestlers do not like him.
Yeah.
Um, Jesse Ventura mentioned one time that you were his favorite wrestler to wrestle with. What do you think about Jesse? Did you enjoy wrestling with him?
Well, I mean, Jesse, I've said this before. He was the master of getting in the ring
Mm-hmm.
with his opponent,
Mm-hmm.
and he did say that I was his favorite wrestler.
Yes, he did.
And we'd get in the ring, and we wouldn't do anything for 10 minutes, not even touch each other, and the fans would be ready to kill him. They'd be going crazy.
Yeah.
And then once the match started, you know, it was a very simple, easy way to get heat. He just knew how to get heat with the fans, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And of course, I knew how to sell his stuff, you know.
Yeah.
So, you
Mm-hmm.
know, he'd put my arm up, he'd hit me on the rib with a punch, but he made sure that he did everything behind the referee. And then the referee would ask him, "Did you punch him?" And he would say, "No, open hand, open hand."
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he was the master, you know.
He was
So I
really.
did love wrestling with Jesse the Body.
Mm-hmm. Bobby Heenan also, you know, he always made fun of you as your character, a lot of jokes and stuff like that. But he said it was just his way of getting heat with you. He loved you as a wrestler. How was your relationship with Bobby Heenan? Did you know he teased you all the time?
Yeah, I had met Bobby Heenan when I was in the AWA, which
Mm-hmm.
that's where I met Jesse the Body.
Yes.
That's where I met Sergeant Slaughter. No, I had met Sergeant Slaughter earlier, But you know, the AWA had some fantastic talent. You know,
Mm-hmm.
Vern Gagne would have a big show with 5 matches,
Mm-hmm.
and he'd draw $200,000 houses. Where you know, in Madison Square Garden, you'd have like 10 matches.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody that was there was a top talent. You know, could wrestle main event everywhere else. So you know, I met Bobby Heenan. I met Nick Bockwinkel. I met of course Jesse the Body, and you know, everybody was so good, and I
Mm-hmm.
listened to their interviews. And as a matter of fact, I had known Dino. I was with Dino in '77. I was with Dino in '79 in Charlotte.
Oh
I
wow.
was with Dino in New York.
Mm-hmm.
And when we went to the AWA in Minnesota, he's the one that came up with me. He says, "Tito, you gotta come up with a catchy phrase at the interview."
Mm-hmm.
And the next TV tapings, he says, "Why don't you kick your interview into Spanish at the end, you know, and then holler arriba."
Mariba.
And that's where I started the arriba.
Wow, that's really great.
Yeah.
Well, obviously, and you became a Hall of Famer in 2004. Now, Vince is not in wrestling anymore. It's new generation. The legends are starting to come back. Any chance we're going to see Tito back with the WWE on Monday Night Raw?
Well, I don't know about Monday Night Raw, but they had the main event. They brought the main event. You didn't see me in the main event?
SummerSlam, was it Royal Rumble?
No, it was the in November, the first main event, Saturday night main
Oh,
event.
were you in the front row? I think, right? You were in the
Yeah,
front row.
yeah,
Yes, I remember that. I remember that.
yeah.
But
So
you regular.
right, they introduced me, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and I just signed a nostalgia contract, and
Oh,
hopefully they're
great.
going to be making some figures and some merchandise. And
Mm-hmm.
you know, I don't know what part, you know, they're going to have me. Uh, I'm not going to be in the ring anymore, you know, that's for sure.
You
I'm
know,
70. I'll be 72 in May, so
they still look good. So
but not good enough to
to take those
abuse my
bumps.
body anymore. My body's done.
Mm-hmm. When you retired, obviously you became a teacher right here in New Jersey. I mean, for me, if you were my teacher, I'd be like, "Oh my God, legends." How did the kids know who you were? They probably were too young to really know who you were.
Well,
But did they know the
the kids knew who I was because of the parents,
parents? That's what I was gonna say.
and then they could Google me. You know,
Mm-hmm.
we'd have back to school night, and my rooms would be full. You know, because all the parents were fans. You know,
Exactly. You don't want to
and
see them.
but you know, I was so lucky that I had I graduated from college in 4 years when I was playing football, and
Mm-hmm.
I had my degree. I mean, I was one of the few guys that had something to fall back to, you know,
Mm-hmm.
when I retired from wrestling. And I mean, doing it for 26 years and having a pension, you know, a teacher's pension,
Mm-hmm.
definitely the best thing that I could have done.
Mm-hmm. Well, you have your book out, Don't Call Me Chico, which is available on Amazon, correct?
Yeah,
Yep.
it's available on Amazon,
Okay.
and I have some here at home. A lot of times people reach out to me on Facebook or however they want to reach out to me,
Okay.
but I'm
Mm-hmm.
on Facebook. It's
Instagram, Real Tito.
yeah, Tito Santana group.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and if they want to reach out, you know, if they're in the States, I sell the book for $35 with the
Mm-hmm.
autograph, and I
Okay.
ship it, and I pay for shipping.
Oh wow.
If you're out of the country, it's more because postage, you know, to go to Canada is very expensive.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But I have my book. I have 4 different kind of T-shirts. I have 8x10s, or they can send their personal items to my address and send a return postage, and I'll sign it, you know, for a fee,
Obviously. Yep.
and I'll ship it back to them.
Yep.
So
I'm going to
if
leave that
anybody ever needs
information.
something,
Yep.
you
I'm
know,
going to leave that information here, all your information, your Instagram, your where they can get the book and everything underneath the video when I'm done editing, and everyone will get to see that.
okay, thank you, Joe.
Yep, no problem. Tito, it's a pleasure to speak with you. You're obviously a legend, one of my favorites growing up as a child. I'm thankful to have you, and hopefully we can do this again and talk a little bit more wrestling.
Okay, I mean, time flew, didn't it?
It did. It went by quick, right? It goes by really quick. There's more stories I'd like to know, but I want to be respectful of your time. Thank you so much, Tito. You're a legend, and thank you for everything.
Okay, Joe. Thank you for being a fan.
Thank you so much, man.
Arriba!
Arriba.